All right, so we're going to get started.
Sounds good.
All righty.
Sorry, I had to let a cough out.
You're good.
I didn't before you.
This will be on the outtakes.
Okay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Reboot Something podcast. My name is Chad Jeffries, and with me today we have our interns for the 2022 internship program that Trilogy Innovations hosted. So super excited to have Kennedy Hawkins here on my left. We have Collin and Hunter here on my right. And today we're just going to be talking about the internship and picking your all's brains a little bit. So I definitely want you guys to, share your thoughts, and hopefully this will be some value to other interns coming up here in the future. So let's just get started with some introductions. So Kennedy, I'll start with you.
Yeah.
If you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what you're studying. I will preface this with saying that all of them are West Virginia University students, and I myself am a WVU graduate. So anyway, yeah,
Sir.
Kennedy,
Right.
kick it out.
So I'm from Eastern Pennsylvania, about an hour outside of Philadelphia. I'm a current junior, so I came into the internship program as a sophomore, and I study management information systems and minor in cybersecurity.
Awesome. Collin, what about you?
I'm Collin Lloyd. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a senior right now, so I started the internship when I was a junior. I'm majoring in computer science.
Awesome. Hunter.
All right. Well, I'm from Moundsville, West Virginia. I am a senior in computer engineering, and I got hired as a sophomore.
Yes.
So this is my second year. First year we didn't have the podcast, though.
No, we didn't.
A little bit of an upgrade. My exit interview went a little differently the first year around, but second year, computer engineering, Moundsville, West Virginia. I'm the only one here from West Virginia out of the students, so
Yep.
Moundsville.
Shout out to West Virginians.
Yep. So
No offense. At least you guys chose West Virginia University.
that is true. That is true.
We're all Mountaineers, baby, so that's great. Awesome. So to kind of tell the audience a little bit more about Trilogy's internship. So we started it last year, as Hunter said. It was our inaugural internship program, and we really weren't sure. We weren't sure exactly how we were going to go about everything. So we had to ground level. Put the internship together, make goals, plans, the works. So, shout out to our HR team and the people internally that helped. And each of the interns actually had a mentor assigned to them based on skills and what their kind of career aspirations were. So we were kind of methodical and strategic about that. So I think a good place to start is talking about the actual mentorship side of it. So I guess we'll kind of just go in a row like we did in order there. Kennedy, so your mentor was Chris Kirk.
Yep, it was Chris.
Yep.
Yeah, I loved Chris. I mean, he definitely in the beginning, there wasn't as much I needed him for, so it was kind of just getting to know him, getting to know his whole story, how he got into his field. But then as it went along, I kept needing help from him, and he was right there every second and was just like, hey, I can help you with this. If not, give me an hour. I'm on a call. He was great. I met his wife, his kids, and it was very, very personal, and it was a good experience. It was overall, Chris was definitely the best mentor that I could have had. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love to hear that. Shout out, Chris.
Yeah, Chris is cool, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Collin, tell us about your mentor.
So my mentor was Benjamin McMahon. And
McCann.
McCann.
You're good.
But
whole year.
We're keeping that in here.
So the same thing with Kennedy. The first week, the first couple weeks, it was a little bit slower due to taking the cloud practitioner exam, and that kind of had questions because I was thinking of possibly going further with certificates, and then Ben was pretty much there the entire road, kind of giving me his personal recommendation and then giving me also multiple forms of support as well. And then for when we got deeper technically, I was very surprised at how much he knew and how good he was at just Googling and just being able to find solutions. Yeah. And he helped a lot with the technical side, but was also able to give personal recommendations for like, for me, it was more important for career advice more than actual, in some cases, like other advice. And he was just great in that aspect.
That's awesome. Hunter.
Well, I had Steve Adkins, so that was my mentor this year. And if you guys didn't know, him and Chad may or may not know each other outside of work.
Yep.
So same thing, of course, and the first week is, more so getting to know your mentor. I always schedule the first meet and block it off for a really long time. I want to know their favorite color, stuff like that, favorite movies, what bothers them, tabs or spaces, whatever it is, whatever comes to my little mind. So I usually am just asking all kinds of questions right off the start, just to get to know them.
Yeah.
You develop that professional connection, but also like the mentorship is more so like, you're getting on, like, it's like a parent, but for work. It's like it's like your father, mother, grandmother. Yeah. It's like, you're supposed to establish that personal connection first before you really get in more to the technical stuff. So when we're studying for the cloud practitioner, that's what I really use that time for. More so not asking questions, but just getting to know him.
Right.
And then obviously as time went on, same thing. I mean, I would ask Steve a question and I'm like, I've spent like 2 days doing this. 2, you solved it in 5 minutes. And 3, you told me prior to this you haven't worked in a few years. So, just, it's,
I could personally say that is a Steve attribute.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. And it's a good attribute, of course. He's like, I haven't worked in, whatever the technology, YAML. I was asking him YAML questions, EC2 instances, just like, we were just spinning up web apps and stuff like while we were waiting for our results and stuff to come back. Yeah. And just, I mean, he knew immediately how to fix something almost every single time, which is awesome.
That's awesome.
Right. But it shows you the knowledge that required and the experience and like how long it takes to actually know all of the random issues you can run into on a daily basis.
Right.
And on top of that, I mean, you develop a good personal connection as well. And same thing. I'd message him. I mean, he would respond and help me.
Right.
And even last year, same thing when the year prior, when I had George, shout out to George too.
Yeah.
So, the evolution of the...
We miss you, George.
Yeah, we do miss George, but hey, we get it. So and I like to talk about the difference between the two experiences because it's crazy to see how far the company's evolved.
Right.
And
we'll get into that.
That is something we definitely got to get into. But I would say personality wise, George and I, great. I feel like me and George are still best friends, even though I haven't talked to him.
That's good.
Same with Steve. I mean, we are best friends. So, but I would say the personality, along with like what your interest is, you guys always do a really good job at meshing those two together. Right.
Awesome.
So that's the biggest thing because it's someone that I probably would have had that professional relationship with anyway. But since, at first it's like, oh, this is your mentor, so you force it a little bit.
Never really
force quote, but your personalities always they always end up meshing well together. So
well, it's great. I'm glad you all had a positive experience with your mentor, and that was.
Could I add one more thing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And with my mentor, he invited us all to like a Dungeons and Dragons game too, we had a great time. So just to go to show that there is the work side, but there's also the fun side as well.
Right. And that was something that was very important to us whenever we started the internship, was to make sure that we're being thoughtful about who we're pairing you with, but also equipping you guys with real world skills. And I think that's where our internship maybe differs a little bit from other organizations, and not to speak poorly of any other organizations, but our internship was really centered around the interns and really helping them prepare for real world experiences. And the only way to do that is to put them in scenarios that are, real world situations. So, you're working on a team collaboratively, or, working individually, working remotely. So we can kind of talk about that too. It's like, what did you guys think about like the remote aspect of it?
I would love to go first because, you always see the horror stories. We've talked, Collin and I and Kennedy and I, we have talked about it multiple times on the Teams chats. Not affiliated with, the full-time employees around, of course. So it's a little bit more of an open conversation because, I'm not going to fire them. They're not going to fire me. Right. So, but the first thing is you guys do not micromanage. So thank you, because I wouldn't be back for a second year if you micromanaged me. That's the number one thing. It's all about communication at the end of the day. And Trilogy makes that known. They trust you to get your work done, and that's what you want from an employer. You don't want someone breathing down your neck. Yeah. You don't want someone being like, make sure you get this done in X amount of time, or if you don't have this done by 4 o'clock, you're in trouble. Or it is not like that at all. And I mean, obviously, wherever you are going to have deadlines, but there's a reasonable aspect. If I break my leg, Trilogy's not going to expect me to be in the ER writing code. Right. So it's the best thing about it is they treat you like a human. Number one, you don't get micromanaged. You get treated like an adult, which is very nice. Yeah. Obviously when you say they treat you like an adult, doesn't really sound that appealing until you work in a place where they don't treat you like and where you get micromanaged. And my internship experience has been positive. Yeah. But I have quite a lot of friends, quite a lot of people I know who graduated, who work in different companies, and you'd be surprised how many times you'll run into an issue where someone's micromanaging you or 100%. Breathing down your neck.
And that's like outside of internships too. I even have experiences where, heavily micromanaged, and like it has like a hindrance on your performance and ability to, think critically at times, because you're just so worried about either a deadline or like, how are they going to react? And we wanted to like remove that fear factor, I guess. And treating you like a person or like an adult is the easiest way to accomplish that.
Right. And it sounds so simple. You'd think that, they treat you like an adult. Well, it's a job. They should. Well, apparently a lot of places do. Yeah, it's not that common. I've had a lot of weird jobs and have been treated a lot differently. And not to mention you work remote, but it's not one of those things where you have a VPN. We have to log in through a VPN or, they're analyzing your mouse movements or whatever. I don't even know what the other companies do, but I've heard it exists, and it's very very unappealing for that to occur. So they trust you to get your work done, and thankfully that I know of, I've always gotten my work done and no one's had a problem. Which is what I like. I mean, don't break the trust. Right. And if something comes up, communicate it. That's how I could sum up the work from home aspect balance of Trilogy.
Excellent. Well, so one of the things that I found was really important was not only giving them, real world experience, but part of that was actually, working towards certifications, and specifically the AWS Cloud Practitioner. So I'd really like to talk about the Cloud Practitioner, because all of you took it, right? Yes. And you all have it, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Hunter, you got to take your test, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Which, it happens. Yeah. I fumbled the bag. That's not on Trilogy.
No, right.
I will say they did pay for it. And even though I did not pass it, it might've been one question, they did not make me reimburse them. So shout out to Trilogy.
Love to hear that. And yeah, we're at the end of the day, it is a test, and, even professionals that have been doing it for a long time, fail. So it's not, anything against you. Yeah, right?
Steve made me feel a lot better about that, because I failed a test. I'm not gonna lie. That does not feel good. It doesn't. Yeah. That's just how I am. You can see it in my face when I fail a test in school, which I failed quite a lot of tests in my life. You know, you don't make it this far in your educational career without some bumps in the road.
Yeah.
But, you know, it always sucks in the moment. Like when it first happens, like that initial, like, oh, especially when you think you passed too.
Yeah.
Like you have the anticipation of passing. And even it's like that one question, you know, like I was like one question off in a section or whatever.
Yeah.
But Steve, you know, to go back to the mentors, Steve was like, man, I failed my Google one like however many times. And he's like, do not feel, he's like, at the end of the day, I mean, they have their pros and they have their cons. I mean, the con aspect is, you know, you got to memorize stuff.
Yeah.
The positive aspect is I still learned all the technologies, and that's what Steve and Brandon and everyone was saying. Very supportive. So if you fail, they don't make fun of you.
Yeah.
So
we decided to you know, do the AWS Cloud Practitioner and have the interns actually focus on that in the very beginning. And the reason being is cloud isn't as big of a focus in the college courses, correct?
I've heard one class I had one PowerPoint slide on part of it was on the cloud.
Right.
But it wasn't anything in depth. It was just the cloud exists.
Yeah.
So
exactly. And so, you know, that was one of the reasons is, you know, every job that they're going to have an opportunity for, you know, everything's moving to the cloud. And, or if it's not already existing in the cloud, you know, cloud's been around for a long time now,
right?
Over a decade. So it's one of those things where, you know, getting you guys, you know, that real world experience, that was part of it is let's go ahead and just have them, you know, start taking the AWS Cloud Practitioner, have that basis of knowledge in your pocket so you can work on everything else. So, you know,
building off of that, like taking that Cloud Practitioner exam wasn't just even to learn about AWS. I saw that you guys wanted us to develop professionally and be able to have that on our resume, no matter where we end up working. You guys want us to professionally build us up, because that in and of itself, having a certification like that gives you basic knowledge to an employer that you know how to work in the cloud, you know the services, and all the services kind of all mesh together for every cloud provider, the main ones.
Right.
So that just like the professional development aspect of it was that I could just tell that Trilogy didn't just want you for, you know, you have a lot of interns tell you really bad horror stories of like, oh, I had to go get coffee every single day and this and that. Nope, that is not. Intern. It's not at all what Trilogy did. You know, it's you actually got experience in it, and honestly, you're gonna fail like a million times over and over and over. But literally is the only way you can learn.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely, and that's a good point too. It's like all the cloud providers, you know, as far as their services and products are going to be a little bit different, but I guess the main basis, the syntax of it, is pretty much reciprocal across cloud providers. So it's really learning those like fundamentals. And you know, in last year we did not have a plan on the interns getting the cloud practitioner or getting any certifications for that matter until, you know, Brandon, who really was the biggest, I'd say, or, you know, pinnacle as far as like the mentorship and like learning aspect of it. You know, he decided, hey, these kids aren't learning cloud, and that is absolutely, you know, a must-have for pretty much any position that we're going to have. So, which is why we decided for this internship to just start it at the cloud, you know, certification. And we actually ended our last internship with all of the interns, or actually not you, Hunter, because you were a sophomore then, but all of the other interns, we, you know, paid for them to get their cloud certification right at the end.
Yeah,
so.
it wasn't that. Yeah, we started it towards the end of it because, you know, we finished up the project and the primary objective kind of shifted a little bit because, like you said, we don't learn cloud. And when I say we do not learn cloud, we do not learn. It's a slide, maybe.
Right.
I haven't even got a slide from it.
Yeah.
And, you know, my professors, you know, shout out to my professors, shouldn't probably diss them, but they always say it apply. This is my biggest gripe in college. So
I understand.
You know, it's like they're trying to prepare you for the real world, but there's that disconnect, right? So we don't learn cloud, and for whatever reason, X, Y, and Z, I don't know. But it is obviously beneficial because, one, it I used it at my internship a lot, every single day,
Right.
nonstop, 24/7. The first time around, and I had no cloud experience, no test taken,
Yeah.
no idea. Brandon talked about Lambda functions.
Yeah.
For 2 hours. I mean, I understood like the fundamental concepts of them, right? Because we were going over all these serverless applications like the first day, and I had I was so worried because I just met everyone. You have no idea what's going on, and I was the only engineering major. I was like, did MIS learn cloud? Because I have no idea what's going on.
No, we didn't.
Right. So in like the networking aspects and stuff that you learn in school and like how to think pragmatically is all applicable towards the cloud. But I would say you have a lot easier of a time working backwards from the cloud. For instance, after my first internship and I started studying towards the end of the summer, I went back and had software engineering class. I mean, the lecture was one of the easiest classes I've ever had because it was literally just my internship.
Right.
And we used a little database for a website, but I wouldn't call it cloud. It was just a database,
Right.
In a web.
Just a virtual machine.
It was just a web. It was just like a web interface, and you spun up a little database, but it literally had like 2 users stored in it.
Wow.
Opposed to like the infrastructure we handle on cloud, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But my point is, you do not have any exposure to that in your undergrad at all. Not even a drop of it.
But I will say that there have been a couple professors that have asked me in particular, what did they learn? What were some of the disconnects between the college courses and the internship and the real world? And
That's
I appreciated that. Right.
That is the most humble professor to ever walk this earth.
Shout out to Nanda, the MIS professor.
I've never even had him, and I know how good he is.
Yeah,
he is the epitome of what you would want out of a professor, out of a teacher, out of an educator, is to actually ask for feedback from people that are in the industry. And I know a lot of professors will do like side projects. They'll do other things. They'll stay relevant in the industry, but there's only so much like effect that they can change.
Right.
And I like how that sentiment is kind of reflected with Trilogy. That whole college thing of college is what you make out of it, kind of, and what you put in is what you'll kind of get. Same thing with like Trilogy. And if I put in XYZ amount of time, then my mentor or the company will give me that time back. Now, if I come to them with a question that's a little bit underformed, and it's just X, then I'm just going to get back X. And I feel like that's the same way at the college level too. So it's a lot of room for growth as well.
Right. So I really want to focus on, kind of your all's, project. So do you guys want to talk about that? And I wish Brandon was here. I wish Brandon. Yeah. So Brandon Downey, our CEO, president, spent a lot of time with these guys and spent a lot of, a lot of his time.
I would like to start off by saying who has one-on-one meetings with the CEO every day, because I know I did. And let me tell you what, I haven't even graduated college yet, so that's pretty awesome.
We had a meeting with him while he was on vacation. Like he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm in a hotel on vacation." We're like, "Brandon,
well, that's Brandon. Why
are you on this call?"
But that shows and that shows how he is though. Yeah. And that's one of my, I always talk very well of Trilogy, not because I'm on the podcast, because I like them. Yeah. Just have to preface that because you guys are
off the clock right now.
Yeah, we are, which I wasn't going to say Trilogy in a positive light, but Brandon cares about teaching. In an alternate universe somewhere, he's probably a professor, but I mean, this aspect of him teaching is more than a professor can teach you. I don't want to say that too loud because, like I said, I still am in university, so if my professors see this, I'm gonna get an F.
Once he leaves, though.
Right. Once I leave, it's a little different. But Brandon is always wanting to teach you, joining his call. Like, you see like palm trees in the background. He's on Teams talking to us about, we were having problems with one of our projects, and he was just helping us out and how to approach things. And that's something you do not, I just can't imagine somewhere else doing that. Yeah. And not to mention, it's not just like a 1-year thing, because, I have the experience. Last year, every day at 9:00, I talked to Brandon every single day.
Yeah.
Face to face, every single day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean,
and honestly, you know, all of the mentors and, you know, a lot of other folks at Trilogy too, you know, feel the same way as far as like the door is open for you guys. Like we want to give back, you know, and not expect anything in return. We want to pour the knowledge and experience that we have into you guys. That way, you know, you can, if you either, you know, take that through to a full-time job with Trilogy, or if you take that somewhere else, like you never know how our paths are going to cross again. We want to just give to the future of the workforce. And, you know, that's really the fundamental reason why we did the internship, not just to, you know, prepare you guys in hopes to hire you, but even if we don't hire you, we just want to give that back regardless, because I mean, how are we going to better the workforce? Well, like I said, probably be crossing paths at some point. You'd be really surprised at like even like 2, 5, 6 years, you know, down the road.
Hey, who knows?
Exactly.
Who knows?
Exactly. But I mean, we'll be hiring you guys. Don't worry.
Well, you know, and
it's all about timing.
It is all about timing, right?
About timing.
That's how the work, you know, how tech is, and it's how it works out, you know. And it's nothing personal either. And like you said, you never know when paths are going to cross, and it's not like you guys are working us to the bone. It's, you know, it's hard to explain like the work-life balance of it all, because like the company culture is very unique, and for a small, whatever you consider a small company, I mean, Trilogy feels huge a little bit. Like I don't know. Feels.
Well, I mean, we doubled the size since last year.
Right. And it's like the evolution of it's crazy. And I mean, at this rate, you guys are building this reputation of interns coming back, even if it's me, you know, maybe, you know, if you guys do it again, I'm sure you'll have, maybe Kennedy will return. If not, but I know Kennedy's not going to say anything bad. And it's the recognition.
Does Kennedy ever have anything bad to say?
I don't know.
You would be surprised. You would be surprised. Like I said, when the bosses aren't around, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
That's human nature.
Yeah. So that's the aspect of growth, and you guys wanting the best for your interns, and you know, like you said, you might not hire us, whatever, you know, we get a job somewhere else or whatever, but it's at the end of the day, I know if I'm looking for a job, one, I'm going to message you guys. Two, like I'm friends with the people, like I'm an intern, but like I feel I have a connection with all the employees. Which I feel like is weird. Not weird on Trilogy's behalf, but like
it's different.
Yeah, I don't hear that from anywhere else.
No. I mean, you guys are in our Discord channels now for our game nights.
Right, we have game nights, and even during the school year when you guys come on campus, the first thing I do is go to Trilogy's table. I don't go anywhere else first. You go to Trilogy's first. So
I can speak to that.
Yeah,
I think Chad went probably like, I don't know, 6 to 7 months without saw me at every single event. He was like, "Oh my God, he's here."
But why?
Don't turn around.
That's indicative of you guys being here right now, is because you all made an incredible impression on all of us, like during your interviews. So you guys are going to be very valuable in the market, not just for your technical skills, but just as, you know, colleagues. And I think that's one of the things that like we look for as employers is, you know, not only can this person do the job, that's maybe half of it, but a large majority of it is, can I work with this person based on, you know, the soft skills and other intangibles that, you know, create a very good work environment and a great culture. So
right, and that's what separates Trilogy apart. Again, you know, I'm going to go back to this real quick, because even like in the interview process, it's not like, here, we're going to have you invert a binary tree in a Google Doc. It's I mean, you got questions that were technical, but it's also like how you navigate it and how you communicate. It's, you know, they look into more than just a number. They don't give you just a little test score and you're written off, you know?
Well, it's like one of the fundamentals. It's like, are you coachable? Are you teachable? And that was, you know, one of the biggest things for us is, are you, you know, willing to learn and grow? Because that's even what a lot of our
And
folks.
you will learn a lot.
Exactly.
Yes, you
That's
will
just
learn a lot.
technology, right? Like you never stop learning, and so that's one of the biggest things that we looked for. So
Speaking of that learning thing, one little tidbit. One thing that I really liked with the company was that you learn all this technical stuff, and then we also learned the stuff that some places don't teach you. It's that how do you negotiate a salary? How do you
the career coaching
ask
day.
for benefits? How do you build a resume sort of efficiently? So
Yeah. Things to think about from a recruiter's perspective, which recruiters won't always relinquish. And I don't know why. Recruiters out there, do better. But no, I'm just saying. But so we kind of detracted there for a second. But let's talk about the project. Like, what did you guys work on?
All right.
Okay. Do you want me to start? Do you want me to start with what we worked?
You start, yeah.
Yeah, you start. We'll work our way down.
Yeah,
So
to
the very
talk
first
collaborative,
thing that we worked on was launching EC2 instances. That was like the very first base level thing that we did. We basically went through, was it EC2, and then we went from EC2 to API, right? API gateway.
Right. We set up like a web app structure.
Web app
and
structure, and then we kind of went to all different services and played around with them individually. And then we started doing projects that were combining a lot of those different services and using them and connect and actually being able to connect to these services because they're not naturally connected. You have to actually go in there and connect. them
Right.
manually.
Spinning up an EC2 instance obviously sounds really easy. You know, you just click a little button, but there's a lot.
There's a lot to it.
You know, you start at a very elementary level, that first project. Like, I don't even think it was like a project necessarily assigned by Trilogy. It was just kind of something we found and we're like, let's try this. You know, we were waiting for results and we were exploring the technologies and the applications of it. And that, start a web app, build up a web app, whatever. I got code from one of my CS classes, and there's a website Angular application. Spun up the EC2 instance, very elementary, going through the GUI, clicking all the buttons. As Kennedy was saying, API, blah blah blah, security settings, users, whatever.
Yep.
Set that up. If it works, yay, let's make it more complicated. If it doesn't, that's where you start.
need to go back.
Right, and I can tell you, it did not work at first, and I have no problem admitting that.
Right.
But in that project, like I said, we say it now. I'm like, that's almost like a toddler equivalent, right?
Yeah.
Of cloud spinning up and easy. But
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes into it, and then we up the complexity.
Yep.
It's building blocks. You start small, web app. What's next? All right, let's do it serverless. What's next? Let's add a database.
Yep.
What's next? Let's add another layer. So we started adding layers, and then lo and behold, Brandon's like, well, this is literally what we're doing for NRM or whatever contract we were talking about.
Right.
So
Well, see, and that's great. You're getting that experience now before you're even out of the workforce. Imagine, all the students that don't get any of the cloud experience or the real world application. They're not working in the software development lifecycle. They're not working in Agile. And
Right, and
we were like, no, you guys aren't getting us coffee. You all are mocking, systems and applications that we've built for our customers, just obviously in a non-classified or an unclassified,
right. Well, we did
system.
get put on a contract that wasn't a government. We got put on the NRM
Oh,
stories.
right. Okay.
So
That was all of
which
our individual
right
projects.
where we had actual user stories and all of that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, right.
And-
Because that's private sector stuff for us. Yeah.
Yeah. So, right.
That's
and
cool.
Yeah. Awesome. One of my
Yeah.
favorite experiences. And I could talk about.
And that's unique to this internship this year, right? Because
Yeah,
last
'cause
year that was not a thing.
Yeah, that was not a thing, but we're doing the same thing, just, like you said, off on our own, right? Well, off on our own as in our mentors were helping us. Brandon was helping us every single day,
Right.
but we weren't going to break anything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and obviously with security permissions and stuff like that, they made sure we could minimize the problems. We could roll back.
Right.
So
That's cool.
and we didn't. The nice thing about getting put on the contract too, I was worried. There's only like however long the sprint is, like 2 weeks or something, whatever it was.
Yeah.
There's a deadline, obviously, and it has to go and be tested. But these stories were more so like on the backlog anyway. So there was less pressure to get, like, no one was like oh, this is like a core function of the application.
Right.
Right. So like
If it fails, you're losing.
if it fails, you're fired. It wasn't
not much at stake.
right. It wasn't like that. It was on like a backlog, something that's not super important, but still important, like the little happy medium.
Yeah.
And it was, the tasks that got delegated to you were also specific into what your interests were. Like I did OCR, awesome.
Yeah.
And not to mention Brandon and we ran into these problems, and I got to go to meetings with Brandon talking about it with like Randy and all kinds of executives.
Cool. Yeah.
And the negotiations. I don't know how much of the experience I can fully talk about because I signed a non-disclosure agreement. So,
Right.
But just to keep it surface level, I went to a meeting with a lot of people, and I learned a lot about the business aspect and collaborating with others who might not fully understand the complexity of the problem we have.
Right.
Because the problem I was solving was it's a problem.
It's a real problem.
Right. It was a real problem. And I figured out pretty quickly, the economies of scale, like is a scalable brand, and should we put this amount of time into it? And I had a one-on-one conversation with the CEO about this. Yeah. That's something I figured I'd be doing in my career when I was like 60. Right. So it's kind of nice to do it now. But the real life experience this year, incredible. We had our own projects. We got put on an actual sprint. I witnessed the development cycle, like what occurs in a sprint.
Yeah.
That's not a school project.
So I want to ask you guys, what was your favorite part about the internship? Doesn't have to be technical, can be technical. So we'll start with Kennedy.
I would have to say being put on that contract, because then it made it, because all the projects that we were doing before were fun and they were cool and you were learning a lot. But I learned more about not even the services, because you might not be using it. You might never use those services ever again. Mm-hmm. You learn a lot about how to troubleshoot, like how to work through something and problem solve and make a plan of how you're going to do it. But I would say getting put on that contract, because since we were all split up, we had to almost find a way to understand what each other was doing, and then also reach out to other people in the company. Like Craig, I met Craig and I loved Craig. He was awesome.
That's great.
He told me such cool stories about where he's been and everything that he's done.
Yep.
But being on that sprint and doing that one task that you had to do taught you how it works when you're actually doing something for a company. Because the sprint is just a bunch of stories put together and a bunch of individual people working on it, and maybe in teams, maybe in a couple other different things. Yep. But it's all coming together at one point or another.
Yep.
So I know Collin was working in it was MongoDB, and you were doing MongoDB River, which was not going great. I remember that.
Yeah, Elasticsearch. I was going to say, I almost forgot the name just because it was scary difficult looking. It was a difficult task, I couldn't take on too many difficult tasks. That one was one I was Collin, you're doing good.
You got that,
Collin, you're doing great, man.
But he was doing he was doing a MongoDB database. At the very end of what I was doing, I just connected to his database. So it was kind of cool to have that come together. Hunter's was a little different because OCR was it was its own separate thing. It was part of the sprint and everything, but it was one of those things that was way more complicated, and it didn't really relate to what me and Collin were doing, but that was definitely my
Well, that's cool. You guys are all working on different parts, different aspects, and probably based on what you guys were connecting with, most.
Yeah, the biggest thing as well is we move as a unit here at Trilogy. That was the biggest thing. Even once we got put on the contract, we weren't working together. We weren't working on the same task, but at the end of the day, it's, we're like the team of interns. So I made sure to meet with them every single day. That was if I didn't meet with them that day, something happened,
right?
Or someone
was out.
Yeah, right. So you meet every day and we learn together. That is one of the biggest things that you could take away. We learn together, and that is something Trilogy let us know right off the start is you're going to study together, you're going to work together. Yep. And, you don't have to spend 8 hours in a Teams call together, but chat about what's going on. Yeah. And my favorite thing from the internship is going to be the contract and the meeting with a bunch of executives. That is still, it's going to take a lot to top that.
Really?
Right. It's, I got to see a lot of aspects that I would have never seen. And like I said, if I now looking back at it, of course, it's like, oh, well, that makes sense, right? You know, you get to see how this actually works, like in business world, in the technology. But I mean, I can't imagine anywhere else. I would have been 60 before I saw something like that. It feels like so.
Colin, what was your?
For me, it's duality of the technical side and the non-technical side. The technical side, I loved just learning in general, and I know it's kind of a cop-out answer, but when it came to Linux, it just felt like there was always this group of guys that just knew everything and were just geniuses. And then talking with Brandon, and then like even Hunter and I, who were average with computers, you know, like we didn't even know that we could go back one directory, and like Brandon is like pulling out these like ancient like commands from like some past terminal, and they're just working, and then we're like, oh, so that's crazy. But I love how there's this vast pool of knowledge, and then there's so many resources for it. And then on the non-technical side, it was the meetings for sure. I loved having, in the very beginning, we had one-on-ones with the CEO, which was super sick. And then later on in the internship, we also met with each each major group in the company, and then kind of saw how the company was ran from not just a coding side, but also from a HR point of view, from a business side, from a business development side, and all the stuff that comes with that too. But that's a giant rabbit hole as well.
Yeah, right. But no, that you make a good point there in the kind of duality of both the technical and non-technical side of it, because that's exactly how it is in the real world. It's like you have to understand how the business is interacting with other businesses, with customers, and with each other, and then obviously the technical side is what kind of brings it all together and what you guys are working on. So.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to like my meetings while we got put onto the sprint, like in the development cycle, is that business aspect I would have had no exposure to. From anyway, I don't take any business classes. So.
Right.
And one little tidbit for all the interns out there that are like me and they let the technical side a lot more, look into the other side, because you might like it more than you thought you did.
No, that's a great point. And honestly, we could probably I'd really like to focus on feedback that you would, or advice that you would give to future interns or current students. Even people that maybe aren't in college or thinking about going to college.
Right. So. Nothing wrong with self-taught either. I guess we should point that out. There is nothing wrong with self-taught. You can do it. I believe in you.
You can do it.
It's you have more dedication than I do. I pay to go to school because I feel obligated because there's money involved.
Right. You got a big stake in it.
It's not self-paced, right?
Right.
I would like to start with the internship feedback, because one cool little tidbit is, in our exit interview, you called me last year, and I had my exit interview, and yet again I got asked for my feedback, and my feedback was I would like to be put on maybe a contract. And obviously when we were talking about this, the aspect of like I get back the clearance aspect, right? Because it's government, but I would like something where we present, or we had this conversation where I was like, I would like to present it because we went through we wrote user stories, we went through and created this whole infrastructure, but we had, after the internship ended, we didn't have anyone to show it to.
Right.
And I was like, I have lost so much sleep over this. I would love for someone to see it.
So you need some closure.
Right. Closure. That's a good way to look at it. So, fast
closure
forward
on your project.
Yeah, closure on my project. So fast forward to this year, it's, I got put on, you guys literally fulfilled great. The feedback I had in the exit interview, which, was a while ago, but you guys fulfilled everything I asked of moving forward and how to improve the internship. And I wasn't hired,
right?
So the fact that you guys took my feedback and actually used it, that's pretty crazy. Yet again, I don't think a lot of people, sometimes I feel like the feedback box is just there.
It's just there to, right. Exactly.
But you guys actually acknowledged my feedback and applied it.
And that's what we want to do for every internship moving forward is take feedback from that class and make changes for next year. Let's make it better. Like that's the only way to do it, is to give feedback and actually listen to you guys. And I love to hear that. And I kind of already like knew that, but you know, hearing it in this way is very reassuring, I guess, that
right,
you know, we're in the right direction.
This is the first time I've said it all summer. You know, I was waiting until the very end to make sure you guys.
That's great.
I knew it was happening. I was like, wow, they listened to my feedback, but I was, you know, I had to write it out, make sure there was any stipulations. There wasn't. So you guys listened to my feedback. And
what's one piece of advice that you would give to a future intern or a student looking for an internship? What's the one piece of advice that you would leave them with?
One piece of advice I would leave you with. Well, I applied before Trilogy. I probably applied to 50 some places easily. And I didn't get an email back from a single one, except Trilogy. And then the biggest thing is, once you get that interview, you need to sell yourself. Do not sell yourself short, but don't be egotistical, which, you know, I don't know. I could have that's probably something I could work on. But it's making that connection that is the biggest thing. You need to separate yourself from the mass of students or self-taught who already have a portfolio that's better than yours, because once you write code in college, it gets put in the recycling bin.
Yeah.
You don't ever look at it again.
Right.
So that's my biggest thing, is separating yourself. You know, I don't have a 4.0 GPA. I don't have some killer portfolio. It's separating yourself, though, that you have this hunger, this desire, make that connection. And if you make that connection, you know, recognizing who Kennedy is because he keeps showing up at the booth, you know.
Yeah.
Almost be a little annoying.
Yes.
Find out about the company you're interviewing for, talk about projects they're working on. You got to do a lot of research when going into an interview. It's separating yourself apart. You got to be prepared. I mean, and that's the biggest thing, is communicating. That is what separates me from most people I go to school with. I say it all the time. I tell them all the time, I am not the smartest person in any of my classes, and I never will be, which is fine. There are students who can probably program better than me, who can do math better than me. It's just how it goes, right? There's always someone better. But the one thing I pride myself on is being able to sell myself, communicate. And that's the biggest thing, because if you can't communicate, it doesn't matter. You got to be able to work with people. And that's something that has taken me quite a lot of time to get good at.
Well, you know, that's the one thing that I know I always stress to you guys is, you know, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what role you're in, no matter what, you're always selling something, whether it's your services, yourself to a job or an employer or whatever it is, you're always selling yourself. And so you don't want to sell yourself short, but you also want to sell yourself in a way that communicates that you're open to, you know, learning, and that you're open to, you know, actually caring about the job that you're applying for, and not just the, you know, Indeed trap of one-click apply.
Right.
Speaking of,
that's a danger trap. But let's move to you, Collin.
The piece of advice that I had kind of went along with Hunter's, especially with when he said that whole 4.0 GPA thing, is that my piece of advice is it's very easy to get lost in the rat race of just, you know, 4.0 GPA, learning these languages, taking these coding practices just to land that job. You kind of lose track of yourself as an individual and just more so see yourself as a number. Big advice: do not see yourself as a number, because we're all people. And for example, work-life balance, Trilogy does a great job at it. I've had a little bit of experience on the other side where that quality has really highlighted it for me, you know. And also that personal side too is like, yes, you can code in all of these languages, but who do you know? And most of the time, for some people, it's, and I have this entire portfolio, but I haven't been to any career fairs and I haven't done any talking. Like, Hunter just kind of recommended me. He was like, hey, show up to the career fair. And I was like, yeah, man, sure, why not? And then I went and talked, and look where
the rest is history, right? And I just want to point out that I knew not a single soul of Trilogy. Like I said, I'm from Moundsville, West Virginia. I didn't go to school with Chad or I don't have any family that works at Trilogy. Like, I want that to be known, because that is, like, you know, my parents aren't engineers. They're not. My dad's an electrician. My mom.
Well, you're first generation college student.
Yeah.
Right?
So, like, you know, my dad always says, "It's who you know," and well, I didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
And I was having this issue where I was applying to places that, you know, look at you, just And I mean, I had a pretty good resume. Obviously, I got hired. So, and it's like you have to make that connection, because if you don't know someone, well, when there's a career fair, that's a really good way to do it. But I got hired during COVID. So I didn't even talk to Chad face to face in person for no career fair. I didn't find you guys through a career fair. I found you guys through a job board on from my professor.
That's right.
But it's
but you followed up,
right?
You
follow up.
You followed up. You communicated properly,
right?
And you sold yourself. I mean, it was you made yourself an obvious fit. And there was a million other students that may have had a better resume. You know, may have had a better
not now.
May have had a
not now. I got
resume.
Trilogy 2 years.
You know,
so.
But you know, with that being said, like
making that connection,
exactly,
though.
making the connection, exactly. Tell a story, right? And like you told your story very well, in, you know, the things that were important to you, some of your background, and why you're like, you know, what I got out of your interview when I first spoke with you was that you were a hard worker and you had good work ethic and good communication, and that was like the biggest thing for me at that time. So
one little thing that I just wanted to add to was my also big piece of advice, and I know it sounds kind of simple, but just be a professional and just hold who you're applying to that same standard. Like, be open with communication, be open with, you know, whatever, right? But make sure that you're holding yourself to the same degree that you hold them, and vice versa, of course.
That's a great point. Well, let's finish off with you.
Well, I'll bounce off that really quickly, then I'll give my advice. I know for a fact my roommate had a better resume than me. On paper, he looks 10 times better than me. He's a CS major. He's got a ton of experience coding and all this other stuff. It is not about your resume at all. It's really not. If you have a good resume, yes, it helps. It helps.
It needs to be good, of course.
You need to have like at least a decent resume. You need to really, the biggest thing is being able to communicate. Because this day and age, you get people that just can't communicate. Yeah. You cannot work with someone who can't communicate. It's impossible. So I know for a fact that somebody had a better resume than me, but I think I annoyed the crap out of Chad for months.
Right, you were going to the tables.
I was a freshman when I met Chad, and I know you guys didn't hire freshmen, and I just stayed persistent. I wasn't like emailing him every day. No. I would email him it would be like a couple months or something, and then I'd be like, I'll go check in with Chad and just see how they're doing. And I would do that every so often, and if he didn't respond within like a week, I would just send it, which never happened actually, but you just send another email. But, you know, it was just one of those, it was just being very persistent and making it very clear that I liked the company. I looked up everything about Trilogy when I found them. Like, I literally went to the website, looked up everything I could know about them based on their website, based on their social media.
And then you came to us and you told us our story, basically, and I was just like, wow.
Yeah, I did.
Which is, no, that's great.
Yeah, it's great.
Yes.
You made that personal connection.
I did,
My ears perked up whenever you talk about our company, because obviously it's I don't have to sell you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. So you found value out of a company that matched yours. And I think that's what you really showed.
One of the things about Trilogy too, when I was in my second interview and Brandon was on the call, didn't even know he was on it because he was a little icon. He wasn't like, he was kind of just sitting there watching, and he just goes, "Oh, hey, Kennedy." I was like, "Oh, Jesus."
Right.
And then he goes, "What's your favorite joke?" And I was like, oh no, I gotta make a joke on the spot. And I was lucky enough to meet his friend that worked at the FBI with him. I made a joke with him that his friend of the FBI wanted me. So I made that joke, and I was like, thank God I had that joke. But yeah, I mean, just that alone like made me like Trilogy even more. That was my second interview.
Cool. Yeah.
And I knew, because you said I was the only sophomore that made it past the phone interview, I knew my roommate didn't get the second interview, and I had to act like I didn't know.
Right.
Like for a while, because I was like, I don't want to say anything. Like, I asked him, I was like, "Oh, how did the interview?" It was this whole thing, but it really is like resumes are important, and having those different certifications, especially when you get out of college, they look good to an employer, just to really get you past that first point on the desk. But other than that, after that resume gets passed on to that second person, it's all about you.
Connection.
You put into it, connection, and everything like that.
Yep.
But going on to my advice. The advice that I'd give to anybody looking for an internship or a job in general is not being afraid to take that risk and do it. Because I was just like Hunter, where I applied to probably 30 or 40 different internships and got denied from pretty much every single one of them. But it's just the point of doing it because if you don't do it, it's like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I'm a big basketball fan, so that's a huge quote that I use all the time for different scenarios and stuff. But
it is Wayne Gretzky. It is Wayne Gretzky. But I didn't want to, we were talking about ego earlier, so.
Yeah, I mean, taking the risks, not being afraid to fail, because I will tell you, first day at Trilogy, I was like, I knew none of what he just said. Like, all of it sounded like gibberish to me.
Right.
But he does, like, Brandon did that to us on purpose, because if you don't react, if you can't handle yourself in a stressful situation, you barely can, then it just means you barely can handle yourself in a good situation.
I wouldn't even use the word stressful almost. It's like I wouldn't use the word stressful. I would use it like challenging almost.
Yeah.
Like he's challenging you to look up these things. He's not like contesting you like, oh, you don't know this. Oh, you don't know that. It's like he's making you think. He likes it. He puts questions into your head, right?
Yeah.
And usually the conclusion you come to is the answer that he wanted you to come to anyway.
Right.
It's a skill that he has.
He does. Yes.
And I mean, if you've ever,
I have no idea how. Like, it's like a winding path that eventually meets up in the end.
Right.
He's a good teacher, man.
Right. It's one of his skills, and you'll have to talk to him to know him. But he always is challenging you in a positive way. I've never closed my laptop at 5 and been like, I hate this.
Yeah.
I've never had that. At 5 o'clock, I'm like, man, I have a sick job. And I'm like, it's 5 o'clock. I'm done too. All right.
Yeah. Right.
I would say the biggest example of Brandon doing that too was through when we were getting the cloud certification, when we were studying for it. All of us were pretty like, oh God, we got to pass it. All this stuff. They kind of put it on the table for us and said, you have to pass this, not in like a mean way, just like you have to pass it, right?
Yeah.
So. It put you in that very like stressful, challenging environment where you basically had you just could not fail. There was no option to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And when he had the meeting with us after, and I know Hunter didn't pass it, I knew in that moment when he started talking that he was about to say, it's okay that you didn't pass, because that wasn't the point. The point was to get you three to work together and to work together to pass this together as a team. And it was so cool to see. I was like, wow, thinking back to it, like, that really did work. Like, it got us all close and got us all working together.
It did, right?
That's great.
I was like, if
countless hours in the library.
Right.
Really?
We went to the library
This is
together.
behind the scenes. This is news to me. I did not know this.
We went to the library. We were studying. We had it up on the TV in the libraries.
Cool.
And we were studying. So
what you're saying is these guys weren't good teammmates. Is why you basically.
Like I said, I fumbled the bag. I mean, there's nowhere. It happens.
I mean, you were literally like one question away.
Yeah,
so
I was
that's
actually it happens.
You're not the first person and not first intern either, and not the first professional that's failed that test. So.
Right. Which when I first failed it, I was freaking out. I was like. Well, it was fun working on Trilogy last summer. I don't know what it's going to be like this summer.
Yeah, and it's scary.
Not
You're like,
right?
Oh my God, you gotta. But then I realized I was like, wait, there's no way. And then the second he started talking, the way he was talking, I was like, he's gonna say that all he meant to do was get us to work together. I was like, you have got to be kidding me.
It was the first thing he said. It was we joined the meeting and he was like, oh yeah, no, it's okay.
It's good. Like
that's awesome.
Yep.
I love to hear that actually.
Right, like he was like. Man, it was, not about that. It was, about growing as a team, making you guys work together, you learning the services, helping each other learn. And I mean,
it was a bonus to get that,
right.
that certification.
Yeah. It was a great idea because as time went on, we run into issues, whatever, working together, not working together. Yeah. We asked each other first. And that was one thing I tried to do as the second year intern, and something that Brandon really was like, make sure, you guys are a unit, especially this year. There's only 3 of us. Last year there was 5. There was 5. One was more HR, but 4. Right. And obviously we had a good relationship, but this one's more close knit.
Yeah.
And we learned together more. The other is like, it was very concentrated, like MIS, there was cybersecurity, I was software, So this year, everyone's jobs started to twine together. We were working together. I was able to help Kennedy and Collin with stuff they were having troubles with, and Kennedy and Collin were able to help me with troubles I was having with. So we worked as a cohesive unit, and that is definitely what studying for the certification did. Yeah.
Yeah.
We went to the library for like 8 hours, and
That's awesome.
I mean,
It
you're
was like probably 2 days before the test. And I think we did, yeah. It was like maybe the day before the test. I can't even remember.
yeah, we were just studying because we were like
It was hundreds of practice problems.
right.
It
You know,
was-
you can only sit in the same room and take so many practice tests by yourself, so we had to mix it up.
Yeah. Well, guys, this was an awesome conversation. I really appreciate you all, and not only just the time that we spent together this year and seeing you guys grow, but you know, coming in now that the internship is officially done, and coming in off hours to talk with me and be candid and honest. So I appreciate you guys more than you know.
Yeah, for
And,
proof, I dress casual.
you did,
I dress
you
casual. I dress
You
casual.
even got the jeans that act like they have holes in them, but they
Yeah,
don't
they don't.
actually.
Right, but they're still considered ununprofessional. But
That's okay.
I'm not working. At the current,
Right. But no, thank you guys again. Any last thoughts? Anything that you guys want to add?
One last thing, because I've been holding on to it.
Please.
Because Kennedy brought up a portion of it, and then Hunter brought up the other portion. For a little bit of context, I had a previous internship, and the way that I got that one was being constantly on. I was applying, I was going to their career things. I even just like walked into where they were having open interviews, and it was like, hey,
Wow, yeah.
And then after I landed that, to what Hunter said, with after he got the trilogy, is that just opens up the doorway for basically any other thing that can happen. Is just getting that one thing on your resume, and usually you get that one thing by being kind of annoying, but you kind of have to stand out, you know. And
Right.
and for me, where school, you know, is like whatever, just kind of pass, but I do take a big emphasis on that personal connection, you know. And and you just got to get your foot in the door first.
Right. And you and through Hunter telling you about our internship, you applied. Actually, us hiring you had nothing to do with Hunter's, you know, with you and Hunter's, like, you know, previous.
I had no say.
No, you had no say.
I had none.
And you know, but that just goes to show that, like, you asked around your network, and you know, Hunter obviously likes you enough to be like, hey, come work at Trilogy.
Absolutely.
And then you know, you all just pursuing to get, you know, where
Right.
you were.
The only say I had in the hiring process was literally who I knew that showed up to the career fair.
Right.
They're like, do you have class with this person? Yeah. And like, oh, do you like, are you, you know, obviously, like, do you talk to them? I'm like, oh yeah, like, I know who that, you know, I have class with a lot of
You
people.
did a good job of keeping it like unbiased. For
Right,
Sure. I had to like pull it out of you basically.
Right. Like, I'm not, you know, I didn't have any.
Who is this Collin guy?
Right. You know, it's like, I know I had
must
class
have
with
classes
these people.
with him.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was about it. That's pretty much all I said was,
Yeah.
oh, I have class with them, or, oh,
Yeah.
you know, this person I like worked in projects with, or,
Yep.
you know, and, but it's a lot different. You know, I can't really classes are so big. I can't know everyone. I don't know how everyone works, or.
Well, the best way that I hire people, you know, professionally, not for the internship, the most effective tactic for me is tapping into our current network and the people that we have connections with, and that they can refer, not only to have incentives tied around our employees actually giving those referrals, but I mean, it's incentive for the employees to also give referrals that not only reflect them, but like people that they want to work with or they've worked with in the past. So it's like, I very much kind of, you know, considered that in the internship as well. And if you have classes and projects you like to work with people on, and you know that they do a great job, then that's like one less thing that I have to like assess. Right. So,
yeah. And
but yeah, I know I had to specifically ask, you know, I was like, Hunter, let's not, you know, you're obviously coming back. Right. And that's like side conversations that we had, because we already knew that we wanted to hire you again. And
thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, with that being said, anybody else have any last thoughts? Because Collin had one.
Hopefully on the next podcast, I'm not an intern.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And then we can dive into some deeper, you know, concepts about, because that's the thing, we are going to start getting more technical as the next podcasts like come down. And so we'll be talking about, you know, Red Hat technologies, cloud, you know, different concepts in cybersecurity, and some of the, you know, kind of things that are going on in the industry. But yeah, hopefully you'll be having those conversations, not as an intern.
Right. You know, if one day.
One day soon.
One day soon, sooner rather than later.
But anyway, with that being said, we're going to wrap up for today. Thank you all again for joining us, and look forward to working with y'all in the future. And look forward to seeing you next time. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Got to say that. If you found value out of this and think that, you know, somebody in your network is a student, or, you know, maybe wants to get into technology, you know, please share this with them. I feel like, you know, there's a lot of value in showing, you know, what you guys actually learned and getting you guys to actually talk about it publicly. So, you know, this is kind of unique. I haven't seen this out of any other company. So hopefully, you know, if you found value out of this, please share it with somebody that you think might like it. And that's the only way we grow the message and ultimately impact the, you know, people in our industry and of West Virginia. And yeah, there's a lot of technical, you know, jobs and opportunities out in our area. So so this is one of the ways that we're developing the future workforce, is through the internship. So so again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Smash that like
Smash the like button.
the like button.
Crush it.
Thank you. Yes, exactly.